Yo, what's going on, everybody? I just wanted to come on here and I just felt like talking about game development a little bit today. And all I'm going to say is game development is really hard. And I could go over all the reasons why it's difficult, but there's a million other videos on YouTube already about these subjects. So I really just want to talk from a personal experience to maybe give some extra insight into what's been difficult for me personally in game development. So one of the big things that's personally been an issue with making games throughout the last 10 years or so, working on various projects of different scales and size and just not getting them completed. Personally for me, it's just really hard to focus on one single project for an extended period of time, like over a few weeks. You know, when you first start a new project, you're really excited about it. It's fresh, you get all these new ideas and fun perspectives, and then eventually you typically run into some small issue that's kind of like your first little wall that you have to overcome. I imagine most game developers don't just magically spit out the perfect game right away, unless there was some extensive planning that went into it, but then you would have spent months planning when you could have been working on the game as well. So there's just two ways to go about it. Even if you plan out the masterpiece, honestly, I still think you're going to run into an unknown issue that you wasn't prepared for. I don't think there's any way to prepare to make a game perfect just on paper until you see it in front of you and you actually play it and put it in front of other people, your target audience or your friends, your family, whoever. If you see them play the game, you're probably going to be surprised that their reaction is going to be very different from your original idea. So sometimes you do have to be really flexible with the project instead of sticking to this master plan that you have, because I'd say 9 times out of 10, you're probably not looking at it from the right angle. So if you're like me and you just get in and you start making a prototype and then you start playing it and getting a feel for it, that's kind of just the way I prefer to do it instead of planning everything out. So to land back on my original point of not being able to stay focused on the project, when you're making this prototype, it's really fun and cool and fresh, but then as the game scales in complexity and you're a solo dev, you got a lot of responsibilities to start taking on. Your brain can get everywhere. It can become really overwhelming very quickly. But that's just personally one of my struggles as a solo game dev, is just sticking to the project and continuing to see it done. Honestly, I get to a point where I'm like, this might actually not work the way that I intended. So usually when I hit that point is when I'm kind of like, should I keep spending my time on this or start fresh again? Now, yes, you could just keep polishing the game infinitely until it's what you consider to be decent enough to put out there. But I think if the original basic prototype isn't fun or creative in some way, it's not really going to stand out too much, and it's probably just really not worth your time, honestly. And that could just be me being lazy and not wanting to put the work in to something that I'm just not passionate about. And I'm just a single game developer here on YouTube right now. So, I mean, my opinion could be my own, but that doesn't mean this is true for everyone. So if you disagree, that's totally fine. I'd say the second thing that I struggle with is definitely keeping myself motivated. You know, I'm not really able to share this project that I'm working on with a lot of people, maybe a couple close friends or something. But even then, I know they're not going to feel the same way that I do about the project, because this is like literally my baby that I'm working on, right? And then everybody else, they can be like, oh, that's pretty cool, but they're not personally connected to it the same way. So that's just a difficult thing. Even though I can share it a little bit, I never get that true feedback of like, what I'm doing is a really good thing to be doing. I really do think that mental health plays a huge role in the game development, because you're just locked in on your PC for days at a time. You know, yeah, you want to take breaks and stuff, but most of the time you spend a long amount of hours just sitting in front of that computer, and you're just you and your brain. That's the only thing that you got there. I actually do wedding videography, which is kind of cool that videography also helps me in game development for the cutscene element and like storytelling stuff. I think it really helps you know a little bit more about cinematic things and general camera knowledge to apply that into your game as well. I'm gonna say number 3 is probably creating or gathering assets is one of my weakest points. Like there's tons of free assets available on the internet these days, which is great. Game development tools are always getting easier and easier to use, which is amazing. Personally, I don't want to be put into a category of being an asset flip, so I tend to want to make my own assets. And the assets that I do get, I have to be strategic about which ones to get. So now it's more convoluted and more watered down. There's less options to choose from. I'm going to use a 3D character, for example. Like, let's say I want to get a 3D character off the internet, off any website, the asset store, anything. There's a lot of times that I've downloaded something, drug it into Unreal, and like, it was just a complete mess. Like, there was different folders and stuff was just put everywhere. It was honestly a nightmare. And then a lot of the materials don't automatically get applied to the model either. I personally prefer if it could be dragged and dropped in. That's great, because I don't really want to have to fiddle with somebody else's asset to make it work. It's just kind of a pain. So when I'm making a game project, I definitely put into perspective, how many assets am I going to need for this? That's going to dramatically change how difficult this project's going to be. So that's going to lead me over to the fourth thing that I struggle with as a solo game developer. I really don't like big projects. When I first started, and many other game developers when they first start, they're all excited to make this huge, grand MMO RPG project that's going to change the gaming world. I personally discovered that it's not for me. Some people will chase this. They're going to make their dream game, but that's not for me. That's not what I want out of game development. I feel like if I have to spend 5 to 10 years on a project, that's a significant amount of my life that I'm not going to get back. And you don't know if the game project's even going to turn out. And especially for most people just starting, they don't even have the skills to do all these things they want to do. I just don't think it's not something that I want to spend my time doing. So I do struggle with coming up with ideas because they need to be small enough to be easy to create within like a year at most. That's my goal, is to make a game under a year. I would want it to be done so I can move on and keep the pipeline just feeling fresh, and just having different experiences like as I live, because the time we have is not guaranteed. So personally, that's why I wouldn't spend 5 to 10 years on one project. But the difficult part is, you come up with a simple idea, it's typically not going to be fun. There's a weird balance between simple and fun. And I personally struggle to find that balance. Like, I have millions of simple game ideas, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a good game. So that is a really difficult balance for me that I am constantly flipping through, is I have a really good idea, but then I have to reel it back in and scale it down to make it feasible for a solo person to create. And if I was going to do a huge project, I would still only ever probably go to 2-year development cycle max, and I would have to get a team in to make sure that that happens. So that might happen down the road, but for now, that is not in the pipeline. And finally, moving on to number 5, and I feel like there's 50 things that I struggle with, but let's leave it at 5 for today. I think it's hard to balance game development into other careers and just a daily, regular, normal lifestyle. That's most likely a me problem and less of the game development problem. But I do personally find it difficult to focus on game development while I'm doing other projects that need to be done. Just for example, as I mentioned, I do videography. So that's a whole nother skill set that you go out and learn. And that is actually something I'm good at, is learning a mass amount of skills. So I feel like I have a really wide, broad knowledge, but it can be really hard to bounce between and get really focused. Because personally, my ultimate goal is to just truly focus on game development for the most part, and then have a little something else on the side just to be able to step away, get a fresh mind, and then come back. And personally, what I'm dealing with as of now is just, I feel like I'm bouncing from point A to point B to point C, back to A, back to B. It's just all over the place, so it can be really chaotic and hard to keep up with. I don't feel like I have a solid routine, and my goal is to continue building towards establishing that routine that I want, so that as my life continues, eventually I'll get to the point to where I can focus on game development. My income is still there, so I don't have to worry about it, and I would have some little side project that I can use to step away from the computer once in a while to do something hands-on, to get a different part of my brain activated. But yeah, it's just been difficult. Right now, I haven't been able to find a whole lot of time to work on my game projects. And more often than not, it just calls to me every time I come home in the evening. All I can think about is, man, I really want to work on that game. I really want to work on that game. So I feel like that's how I know that the game development is what calls to me more than anything. Even if I try to focus on other things, game development just keeps coming back, and it's just calling me to come back and keep working. I feel like it's something that I'm actually really good at, and I've invested so much time learning and working within projects just to continue to build my knowledge. I feel like it's just something that I'm really meant to do. Honestly, it just feels right. So to wrap this video up, I do hope to make some more personal content here on this channel, not just tutorials. I would like to mix in some actual experiences and problems and tips and tricks, all that stuff, just in general, to talk about game development and help other game developers that are in a similar situation as me. And honestly, I just want to connect with other game developers and potentially learn from each other and just continue growing. So down in the comments, let me know what you're personally struggling with and what you're trying to do to work towards solving that problem or working towards a better, healthier game development cycle. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's difficult because it's worth doing. If it was easy, there wouldn't be that much reward out of it. So I'm sure if you keep at it and just keep learning, keep growing, it's going to be worthwhile. So thank you for watching today's video, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again here on Unreal Nexus.